Yeah, Khalif was my client, but he was more than a friend to me as well. And on Tuesday at his funeral, I gave a eulogy amongst other family members. I never could have imagined that would have happened to me, or that this would have happened to Khalif. But in fact, I did fear that this might happen one day, based on what Khalif had gone through. And if you're not familiar with the story, he was a kid, 16, when he was arrested. He was arrested based on a tenuous allegation by a victim who had credibility issues. And basically, when he was arrested, he was put up against a brick wall, handcuffed, and a police spotlight was shown on him, and the victim pointed him out. Very suggestive, but the Bronx District Attorney allowed that to pass. Bail was set. The family could not immediately make the bail. They did later on, but that's neither here nor there at the moment. And then he endured 3 years, a 3-year prosecution or non-prosecution by the Bronx District Attorney's Office, who ultimately dismissed the case. And during that time, he was in solitary confinement for 2 years, 2 horrific years, over 800 days in a small 9x12 cell with a bed and a toilet and a sink, not even a pillow. I won't recount all the horrors that Khalif experienced, but there's no doubt in my mind that because of what he endured, it caused him to be suicidal in jail and thereafter upon his release. And it led to his death. There's no doubt about it. And I really do, I wish I could have been avoided, because when you got to know Khalif, yes, he was jaded, certainly from jail. How could he not be? And he had trust issues. Can you blame him? But when you got to know him, he was really a shy, humble kid who had a great sense of humor and he loved to learn. It was a good outlet for him being in school. He actually wrote a paper on solitary confinement this past spring, which I have to say was really impressive. I actually learned something from it. I think the mayor should read it as well. Our lawsuit's still pending. It has to be. Khalif was a fighter, so we're going to fight, and we're going to continue this fight for Khalif, for his legacy. Khalif's message was always, he was telling his story, not for the attention, but to send a message and to tell that story so other young men and women wouldn't have to go through what he went through. That was his message. Now, unfortunately, it's his legacy. So where do we go from here? It's a very good question that Keem posed. It's not an easy answer. I wish I could tell you, hey, Khalif's coming back, but he's not. And that's the hardest thing, and it's heartbreaking. It was heartbreaking for me when I heard. It really was. And I know how devastating it was to his family, who lost a son, a brother, a nephew, an uncle. And they have to move on, and he'll never come back, unfortunately. So how do we really get justice here, aside from our lawsuit? And I think Keem is on the right, is really going in the right direction where we have to keep his name alive. There's only so much we can do, because he's right. At some point, the media is going to stop talking about this, and there'll be another story. But the reforms have already began being made. The city acknowledged in 3 different laws in the last 8 months that Khalif was the face of those laws. They abolished solitary confinement for juveniles. They just recently introduced some speedy trial legislation so people aren't spending so much time in jail. Remember, those are all innocent kids. 80% of them who are on Rikers Island, they're innocent people. They haven't been convicted of anything, yet they're presumed guilty by our system. Yes. And it's a shame. Yes. It's really a shame. It shouldn't happen. It's appalling. And it's appalling that we even have solitary confinement. There's no place for it in our society. And now they're talking about bail reform, which is another thing that led Khalif to stay in jail for so long. All of these little things, all of these things. But I hope there's some substance in these reforms. And it's not just superficial. by some politicians who promise to change things. And then when the story's gone, the law subsides, and it's back to the same way of doing things. All I know is we have to continue to speak, and that's why I'm here today. And that's why I've been speaking all week. Yeah, I've made some TV appearances to speak about this, what's the word? Beyond tragic. I'm running out of adjectives. Just travesty of justice. The most utter and complete failing of our justice system, probably in the last 100 years. You can talk about Michael Brown and all the outrage after the fact, but when you look at the dynamics of Khalif's case, Michael Brown happened in an instant. Police said one thing, his family said another thing, right? That whole discrepancy. This is 3 years of torture, mental, figurative, and literal torture that this kid went through. In this city, not some obscure third world country, far, far away, right here, among the most progressive cities in the world. And you know what other countries think about solitary confinement? They frown upon it. It's inhumane. There's no place for it. Yet it's still going on to some extent, even with the abolishment of juveniles. So we just have to keep talking about this and keep talking about Khalif, because I guarantee you, you may have heard him interviewed a couple of times, and what you saw was so real. And if you ever met him, I know for a fact he would have touched you in some way. There was just something special about him, because no matter what he went through, that he was holding inside, he always said thank you. He was always respectful, and he had genuine dreams and ambitions. He'll never get there. He'll never get there. So the city, as they are prone to do, thought it was in their best interest to drag this case on. And listen, sometimes these cases last 4 or 5 years in the courts until they're settled. And unfortunately, we never would have known what would become of Khalif, because I thought it would have been, I always thought, I can't wait till this is over, so maybe he can go away to college. Or maybe he can go on a plane and go somewhere.